Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer 90, which is your source for all your FC Dallas, U.S. national team, and international club gear. Everything from Juventus to Chelsea to Chivas and a whole bunch of other stuff, including the new USA gear, is all available on their website, soccer90.com. And because you are a fantastic Third Degree listener, we're going to give you 25% off your order when you use the code Third Degree at checkout at soccer90.com. Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another episode of Third Degree, the podcast. How you doing? My name is Peter, and with me today is not, at least not yet, Dan Crook, who is somewhere out on the highway running very, very late. Maybe he will join us, maybe he will not. And whatever, the only reason you listen to this podcast anyway is your hero and mine, editor and founder of thirddegree.net, the good Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Well, thank you, Peter. I don't think that's true, but I appreciate the sentiment. Thank you.
It's absolutely. If Dan and I did a Third Degree podcast without you, it would have 3 listens.
It would still be the number one Dallas Sperm podcast.
That's like smallest midget. Okay.
Yeah.
That was probably inappropriate. Okay, so look, everybody. We are on a winning streak. And let me say we, because this is when I feel like I want to be part of all of this. So I'm going to say we are on a winning streak. And sticking it to the new, annoying, overly needy Austin FC, Dallas 2, Austin 0. And Luchi has got a good thing going, and everybody's feeling much better about this season, Buzz.
Oh, man, yeah, everybody feels great. I mean, winning's fun.
Winning is fun.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves winning. And it's true not just to the fan base, and of course fans enjoy sticking it to the other team and the other team's fans. And Ryan Hollingshead enjoyed winning so that the fans could stick it to the other fans. That was a great soundbite from Ryan. And practices, listen, practices have not been super negative even when they weren't winning. They managed to keep it really positive, but there's no doubt that the atmosphere is better like this week. They all recognize that they got some huge results on the road, and they all recognize that they got a couple good home results. Now, they'll often get home results that are good, but they feel really good about the way they're playing and defending their home turf and all that stuff. And they know they got 2 more good chances to win at home coming up. I mean, tough teams, but their home advantage for everybody in MLS is so huge that you really got good chances to win. So good times, right?
All right, so I was somewhat surprised because your instant feedback, your instant video reactions that you post on social media in the hours after watching the game, I'm always interested in those and what your take is. And through some of the losses, you've been really, really positive. But I'll be damned if you didn't actually have a ever so twinge of, hey, everybody, let's put the brakes on after 2-0 over Austin. Yeah,
they squad rotated. Wolf left. They have 3 DPs, which is more than Dallas has. And he left. He put all 3 of them on the bench, and I can't remember whether they had any more changes other than that. But when you put 3 DPs on the bench in a league of parity, that's a lot of talent and firepower on the bench. So, they rolled all those guys in one sub, which is funny. I was like, has there ever been a moment when a team has subbed in 3 DPs at the same time before? I bet there hasn't been. So you have to take it with a little bit of grain of salt that they didn't roll out their number 1 best team. But as Colin Clark family said, they brought who they brought and they got their asses kicked. So you play who you play.
That's right. And I'm just going to play FC Dallas Homer here and point out that FC Dallas set their 2 DPs, and their best starting 11 doesn't include them.
Yeah, right. Well, it doesn't right now. I mean, Acosta should be in the lineup, when he is, well, whenever he should be. He's not right now. He's not playing really well in practice, but he definitely should be in the lineup. The other one should not be. So then it really, but yeah, that's a good point. They're right now, their best 11 doesn't include any DPs. That's amazing, doesn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's it's one of those facts about this team that wavers that weird fine line between being embarrassing and something to be really proud of.
Yeah, I mean, look at the lineup against Austin, right? Pepe's 18, Sean's 20, Fleurs 20, Paxton 21. I'm doing this off the top of my head now. Facu and Ricarte are relatively old, but Tuamasi's 22, Tafari's 22. That's like more than half your lineup is like below the age of 22, can barely drink. I mean, that's an impressive feat, really, honestly. And if you roll Evan Cerrillo in there instead of Ricarte, like they often do of late, that's like 8 guys. I mean, that's remarkable. The man I consider my friend, Mike Renshaw, used to always say, if you're good enough, you're old enough, and soccer is a young man's game. It's like this game was made for kids, for young people. I don't mean like children kids. I mean young 20s kids. This is when guys are at their best. The very best players are at their very best in their mid-20s. And if you're good enough, even in your low 20s, Pele's in the World Cup at 16, Messi's scoring for Barcelona at 18. The best players get it done way before their mid-20s and peak way, at the same time everybody else does. And the best players Dallas has are all their academy guys and their young kids. It's amazing.
Yeah, before we get into the specifics of the Austin game, I do want to review the winning streak, which or not winning streak, the undefeated streak. That's the actual, because there was a tie in there. And think about the games that were played, and how I'm fascinated to hear from you, Buzz. How much of our excitement over the undefeated streak is a reflection of how much better this team is, or is it maybe, if we're all being honest, we didn't play all these teams at their full strength and a little bit of luck there? I mean, where does that all balance out in terms of reality?
Well, I think you can be really excited about some of the results because they came on the road. And it was the turnaround on the road where you won one and you tied one against the 2 best teams in the Western Conference. And even if they were Seattle's on a little bit of a downturn, but they're still one of the best teams in the league. Sporting Kansas City, despite the fact that Vermes has tick about Luchi or whatever, for some reason, they're still one of the best teams in the league. You beat an arch rival, admittedly at home, but you also beat LA Galaxy at home. Slightly shorthanded, but then FC Dallas was shorthanded in that game too. So, as harsh and as ugly and as awful as the team had been in the first, third part of the season when they were playing all the veterans, it wasn't until they started playing all the kids again, awesome, play the kids, that the corner started to be turned. And when you compare how bad the early season results were to, even if you only want to call these mediocre results, like comparatively, it's just night and day, the difference in the way the team's playing and the results. So, they're not a gangbusters team that's going to win MLS Cup, we don't think, but it's still light years better than it was. And that's a reason to be excited. Anytime for me, you see progression where the people that are coaching the team that you're following, recognizing what's going wrong, finally get it turned the right direction. That's great. That's exciting. That's what you want to see happen.
So, in speaking specifically about the Austin game, I have all these notes that I took on my phone during the course of the game, and I'll get to the top one, which was the one it has nothing to do with the game itself, but I was most interested in. We'll talk about it at the end. But I don't think I'm being a jerk for pointing out that first half was not very good from either team. It was really slow. Brisson had some really ugly moments in that first half. Ryan, who ended up redeeming himself, I thought Ryan in particular in the first half was just a turnover machine. Every time he tried to pass the ball square, it would get turned over and he'd have to sprint back and cover. But I even have a note in here that says if you were to string all the lateral and backwards passes made between these two teams into one thing, it would circumnavigate the earth 3 times.
That's a lot of bad passing.
Not bad, backwards and lateral, because it was neither team really was doing a lot of attacking, and it was just a really morbid game to watch.
Yeah,
up till halftime.
Well, I don't want to point out that Paxton was lifted at halftime. That wasn't what changed it. I do think as I've tried to indicate before, that sometimes when Paxton tires people out, that the Obrion's change of pace can be effective. But I think really the change was Acosta for Ricarte. I'm sure there also was a halftime speech that probably got some people's attention. I would imagine wasn't in there, but I bet you it was probably an intense halftime speech. But when Acosta compared to Ricarte, they both play the same spot in a sense. They both play like this 8, but Ricarte's 8 is a very deep slinging passes around kind of 8. It's really like I don't know why we would call this, but you want to call it like a false 10 or something.
Yes.
Yeah, he's not really. Well, now he puts in a lot of pressures, which means he gets in the right spot, but he doesn't win duels or tackle at a high percentage. So his ball recovery is not high compared to Acosta. Acosta is more of a legit box-to-box double guy. He can, in fact, 6. Now, maybe he can't quite sling it around like Ricarte, but I honestly think that that's the difference in the two halves for FC Dallas which is contrary to what I have said in the past several weeks when things were not going well. You remember I talked a lot about wanting an 8 in there who could pass and help them be progressive. And Facu has done a little bit of, when he's playing with Edwin, Facu does more of that progressiveness. And Acosta and Ricarte can both do it, but Acosta brings both sides, not just the progressiveness. So I honestly think that cohesion and that kind of holding it together, and when you have a player in there who can do the defensive responsibility, that frees up Jesus to not check back quite so much and stay a little higher. That's all part of it. So, not ideal first half, but they got through it, and in the end, the second half was where they made their hay. Particularly after they scored, and then Houston Austin brought in all their big guns. And Dallas managed to hold it together and get another goal and keep them off the scoreboard, even though they had a couple of good chances.
Yeah, and really, I think you mentioned him as your man of the match, and I think everybody felt the same. Shun, is it Shun?
Shun.
Shun had a really impressive match, and I really worry about his slight size. If I had one criticism about the kid, it's just that he's pushed off the ball a little too easily because he's just so tiny and thin. But it dawned on me after the fact that the kid has started 4 games and has 4 assists. And between Obrian and Vargas combined, who have played way more games and came in at much higher prices and much more vaunted as solutions in the wing positions, they have 0 assists between them.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And I was going to say, and then, I tweeted that fact out, and I got some pushback from Egg Saladino, who's one of your
Fritz,
Fritz. Yeah, Fritz, who's a good, solid listener.
Yeah,
he was trying to point out that this isn't I think what he's saying. I'm still a little confused as to the point he's trying to make. I think what he's saying is that Vargas and Obrian have put several balls in. They're just not being converted for goals. And I kind of understand where he's coming from, but at the end of the day, the only numbers anybody cares about are result numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how many of those crosses that Vargas and Obrian have put in were really assist-worthy crosses? I don't know.
Yeah, some of that's a little Hara bashing again, because those guys were playing in the first half of the season when it was with Hara. All 3 of those guys in their defense are still bringing a little value to the team. This is a team right now which doesn't have guys that are quitting on it. There's no Giassi in this group, sitting down on the field. I mean, literally sitting down on the field and quitting.
We'll talk about that until the day we die.
I'll never forget that.
I know.
So Shun, what a rough start he had when he was here like 2 days and Luchi's forcing him in. And honestly, with the Euros sort of reminding people what he had to bring to the table. And then he came back, and now he's more comfortable and he's integrated, and things are looking really well. And obviously, he must be really likable because everyone seems so excited. Like the other kids in the game are so excited when he gets the assist or whatever. Obviously the guy's a likable dude and positive in the locker room, and he certainly seems joyful in the social media they talk him into doing. But the key thing for me is that for the first time I can't even remember how far back you'd have to go. Maybe even Castillo. the first time in a long time, there actually is a balanced play from both wings, because Paxton's doing things on the right and Sean is doing similar things on the left. They both have an ability to go at people. They both want to go at people. They both can turn. They both can distribute. They both can make a breaking pass. They both can dribble a bit on take a couple of guys. So that balance is so nice. When was the last time we saw that? We were talking about needing a left wing for like 4 years now, I feel like.
Oh,
maybe
forever.
5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had a couple of good right wings. We've had Barrios here for quite a while, and they never had the balance. And all of a sudden with Paxton and Sean, you have some balance, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, although I will push back a little bit and say I still get frustrated that my sense is that Paxton is being hidden off on the right, and it's like it's it's like having a race car and you're using it to pick up groceries and stuff.
Or do you want him to play?
I want him to be in the middle, man. I just Jesus again is, we talked about this last week, so hot and cold. And maybe this, I don't know how you would describe his game this particular week, but there's just so much more to Paxton's game, and I just feel like it gets hidden off, and then of course he gets substituted at halftime, and things shift in the game, and I'm thinking, well, is that reflective of Paxton not playing well on the right, or his lack of speed compared to O'Brien? But again, I think you're right. It probably had more to do with Acosta than it did O'Brien.
I think it's about Acosta. I hear what you're saying. The reality that we live in is that Luchi loves him some Jesus. So Paxton's not going to play in that spot. So for me, Paxton as an 8 is intriguing. But to be honest, right now, given I'm not going to use the word fragility, but given where Paxton is, I'm kind of okay not putting him in the middle. He can actually stay away from people a little bit more wide, I think. So I'm okay with it. I think in the long run, maybe like if there was no Acosta, then maybe I'd be interested in having Paxton be in there as the 8 all the time. The thing is sometimes, and this is hard for people to get. Not you, I think you get it, but I hear people talk about like, man, I think that guy's at his best in this spot. Well, sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you have to think about, how do I get my best guys on the field together?
Oh yeah, right? No, I get it. Yeah,
that's the key. And right now, it's like Paxton. They've had problems at wing, and Paxton can help solve that problem. And they have quality at the 8 spot. They don't need Paxton at the 8 spot, and they don't need him at the 10 spot. They need him at the wing. So in the long run, is Paxton going to be a wing? I don't know. It depends on whether the coaches change around here whenever they change again. But in the meantime, I'm okay with it out there. Certainly right now it's being effective. I do like him closer to goal than Andy wants him to be an 8 all the time, but I actually like the fact that he's closer to goal and can score, because I think he is a guy who can make special things happen.
Now, and I'm sure you'll have more information on your conversation with Luchi later in this episode.
Yeah.
But do we know why he was subbed at half? Was it an injury situation? Because what we saw on television was he was out on the field ready to start and was called off.
Yeah.
And had a weird little conversation with Luchi, and Luchi kind of like gave him the thinking about it, finger to the forehead gesture, and I wondered what was going on there.
They mentioned in the postgame, apparently he had a little tightness in his hamstring. Here's the thing about Paxton, and you know this for sure. He will never say he's hurting. He will always say he's great. He always says he feels great. He will run through a brick wall and tell you he's fine. You have to protect Paxton from himself. And I guarantee you that's a conversation Luchi was having. And if he went to his head, I guarantee you he was saying, dude, be smart. It's a long season. You're coming out of the game. You have to protect that kid from himself. He will kill himself for the team. And that's the beauty. I did a burn on this midweek because as much as I hate 5 subs, it's the rule, so you better use it, and you better manage Paxton's minutes and everybody else's minutes. You shouldn't have to do as much squad rotating when you have 5 subs, because you can take out half your team after 60 minutes, and the next week you can take out the other half at 60 minutes, and then you can flip-flop, and you can shift all guys. Got all these options you can do because you have 5 subs, and one of them is don't let Paxton kill himself, because he will. He will. He'll tell everybody he's great while he's rubbing his leg because it hurts.
Hey, this is where I pause everything and tell the pod listener that the thing that Buzz refers to as a burn, because I'm going to promote this for him, is Buzz's Patreon feature where he does a daily, 2 or 3 minute audio little heads up on a particular topic and puts it out only for people who are a particular Patreon level. So it's
that's
stuff.
for everybody.
Does everybody get those?
Everyone that's a Patreon gets the burn. Yeah, everybody.
Oh, okay. So it'll cost you $1 if you want to, but you should give Buzz more than $1. So
thank you.
There you go. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thanks. What's funny about that is I've actually had a couple of different people that are in the TV or radio audio business tell me that they're really fascinated and intrigued by it conceptually, because people don't often have a time for an hour and a half podcast, but they do have time for 5, 6, 8, 2 minutes.
That's right.
So
what a genius effing idea you had there, Buzz.
Was it your idea? I think it was your idea.
Was it my idea?
I think it was.
Maybe it was my idea.
Thanks, Peter.
Dude, I can't tell you how much great glee I get out of hearing people talk about that thing, because I don't have good ideas very often, Buzz. So when I have one, I like to revel in it. Okay, so we get into the second half. Now, I do want to bring up a moment of controversy, because we debated the issue over the Brisson non-penalty kick call in the Seattle game.
Yeah.
I want to point out that I feel like Austin has a reason to be aggrieved, and this is just because the current way the offside rule is judged, I think creates a really terrible situation, because at one point, I think it's Shun receives the ball, and he is so clearly offside. He goes towards goal. The linesman does not, and again, probably this is how the law is written, and they were not supposed to do this, does not raise the flag, and it ultimately ends up in a corner kick. I don't know if you remember this sequence. Now, somebody may shout back at me, no, Peter, it turned out that he was not offside. But based on everything I know at this point, whoever it was that received the ball, again, I think it was Shun, I was 5 yards offside, and I couldn't believe that they didn't call it at that particular moment. Turned into a corner kick for Dallas, which then turned into a goal for Dallas.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And I just that is an element to the current writing and reading of the law that makes me nuts, because I don't feel like any team, whether it's my team or anybody else's, should benefit from a guy, clearly offside in that situation, and then have it ultimately result in a goal because they got a corner kick instead.
Yeah. Well, first, when I finally got around to watching the sporting game, I finally got a copy of it. I thought it was funny that the Kansas City commentators said exactly what you did, which about their goal that got disallowed, which was, I hate it, but I kind of get it. If you don't go down, you don't get the call, but I hate it. I wish it wasn't like that. And that, which is exactly what you said. I thought that was funny. But to get to your point, this is another thing I did on a burn, was to explain that because of VAR, Major League Soccer has, I don't know whether it's called a rule or a guideline or a referee memorandum or what. It's called passive offside. And the linesmen in Major League Soccer are, the assistant referees in Major League Soccer, let's not slight them, are instructed to not raise the flag if it's even remotely close. If the guy's offside by 1,000 yards, raise the flag. But if it's even the tiniest bit a chance that it's close, then you'll leave it down. Because, and here's why, if you leave it down and the play continues and the goal is scored, and then it turns out you were wrong and it wasn't offsides, the goal scored. But if you raise it, the play's dead no matter what, even if you were wrong. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. I get it, but here's where I get confused, because I swear later in the game there was another incident. Now, it was closer to midfield at this particular moment, but I also suspect this was the result of Peter Vermes chewing on this dude's ear for the next 20 minutes, literally climbing him and chewing on his ear. I don't remember who it was on Dallas's right side, is clearly offside, and the guy raises his flag immediately. And I'm like, well, why didn't you do that 20 minutes ago? And that's where I think the inconsistency of how they're calling that, I think, is going to drive everybody.
It's just a judgment call that it's so blatant that they go ahead and call it. And the idea is basically that you can't reverse it. So it's like they're and if they don't raise it and then a goal never happens, then they just play on and keep going.
See, I've got a solution to that, and nobody's going to like this, but my solution is that if an assistant referee feels like something is offside, then he should stop. They should stop, raise their flag, and stand there. It is up to the center referee to stop play. So that way, if a goal is scored and the center referee is correct and it was offside, they can come back.
No, you can't do that because you might need him down in the corner. You know, if you let play continue, now he's standing like 20 yards up the field. He's not in there to position. So he keeps running, and then if a goal is scored, then he raises his flag, and then they talk about it and look at it.
Yeah, maybe that's the way to do it. Anyway, I just there's got to be a better way to do that because I care nothing about Austin as a team, but I do continue to hate the way that they're calling these and.
It's purely a VAR byproduct. I imagine that this system will get refined and maybe tweaked as time goes on, but it's 100% what it is. Delayed offsides. Yeah.
Okay. And then what was the other thing? I got a bunch of notes in here. Weird time for Austin to make changes. Oh, yeah. What was the... Austin, chose the weirdest moment. Wolf made the weirdest decision to make changes, right when they were about to take a corner. In fact, it may even been this resulting corner kick, now that I think about it, where he decided to... I'm of the school that you don't make changes when you're lining up for to defend a corner kick. Oh, yeah. No, I agree with that completely. He did sub in all 4 players, including 3 DPs, and Dallas did score a minute later. So, whether those two things I don't remember the exact sequence of events. It absolutely happened within a minute of that sub. Even if it wasn't literally on the corner, sometimes when you change 4 guys, it can take a minute for everybody to get everything straightened out. And Dallas may have taken advantage of that. Entirely possible that they were sort of disjointed from it. Again, 5 subs, man. If you didn't have 5 subs, you couldn't sub 4 guys at once. It's like Wolf did it to himself in a lot of ways on this one. And now he is a new coach, right? I mean, he's not super experienced, so he did a Luchi. He did do a Luchi. He overthought
it. Yeah, that's Luchi's king of overthinking it.
Yeah, the other, and I just to go back to Sean here for a minute. The other note that I have in here was my thought after O'Brien came on the field. There's such a clear delineation in the quality between those two guys.
Yeah.
Jadir is clearly faster, but Sean is oddly slickerier. Is that the word? You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. Well,
and his decision making is infinitely better.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why Sean's a starter, right? Yeah. And O'Brien is no longer the starter. Listen, you don't have to go far to convince me that O'Brien is not worth a whole lot, but he is still a, arrow in the quiver, And right now, look at it this way. Right now, if you needed to take Paxton off because he had a little hamstring tightness, who else on the bench is beneficial? I mean, you got Vargas on there, but he only has moments, right? He doesn't have the whole thing coming together all the time. You got O'Brien, who's one-dimensional, but at least he never quits. He doesn't make good decisions, but he never quits. Who else are you going to go with? Khalil's not really ready. Dante wasn't in the 18. Tuamasi's playing right back. So it's like there weren't a lot of choices at that point.
And the other problem, and this is, again, a roster construction issue.
Yeah,
is that O'Brien's really the only player on the team with any real deadly speed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Pepe's not fast.
No.
In that style, right?
Not like,
again.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's just, I mean, there used to be Barrios and Castillo were both wicked fast.
Yeah.
One slightly more than the other, but either one of those guys would be the fastest guy and another guy on some other team. But Dallas at this point in its life only has one really truly barn burner, and that's O'Brien.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you think about it, though, the way Luchi's played the last couple of years, they've been wanting to do this slow build kind of stuff. They haven't really had a need for a burner necessarily. You only need a burner when it's you're going to play deep and counter, which is what Oscar wanted to do all the time. So Oscar always wanted some fast guys. Verticality was what he liked to call it. Yeah. And so it's particularly because Paxton's not slow. Paxton's quick 10
Right.
yards, 15 yards, not 60 yards. But Paxton doesn't play that way. Paxton's like ping, 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 like a dodgeball bouncing around. And then all of a sudden you bring it over on, it's like a track meet. You know what I mean? So like that change of pace is accentuated because they're such different players. Now team integration wise, O'Brien's not really there. His decision making in the final third is not awesome. But if nothing else, maybe he's keeping people on their heels. He kind of pulled that Austin defense apart a little bit. And they were struggling to keep up with him, and he was running down that wing. That's an effective tactic as well, just keeping them off their front foot sometimes. So,
all right. So I'm gonna come back to a name that we mentioned earlier. Buzz, did Jesus have a good game against Austin?
I thought he had a good second half. I did, which he didn't play the whole second half. I thought his first half was okay. We've talked about this a million times with Jesus. When he's coming back too far, when he feels like he's having to come back and overly play defense or come back and try and hunt the ball too much, I thought he was doing a little bit of that too much in the first half. Again, when Acosta came in, it got better. So, Jesus for me, always hot and cold, is all about how high he is and how much he's getting underneath Pepe and exploring those gaps and those little pieces. So, he's so hit. It was funny that he was the man of the match for the broadcast. I thought that was odd. He did score a goal. I mean, I got to give you that.
It was a nice goal too. He made a really good run. Although I still want to give most of the credit on that to I think it was Schoen who dummied the ball, wasn't it?
Yeah. And Tafari was involved as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was a cracker of a shot, though. I will give him that.
Yeah.
From Jesus, it was a nice goal. It wasn't a bad game by Jesus. It wasn't his best, but it wasn't bad.
And then quietly over the last little bit of time, we have seen the player that you predicted would be starting at this position in Tuamase. And he's been solid. And I would it be bad of me if I told you I think there's some of his game that's actually better than Che?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It comes down to the fact that Tuamase is a converted attacker. So if you want the Luchi ball, modern attacking outside back, and the style of Reggie Cannon and Brian Reynolds, that's Tuamase. That's what the plan was. If you want, he's like Ryan in a lot of ways too. Both sides, because Tuamase can also play as an 8. He also likes to come inside. So if you want that system kind of attacking outside back, he's your guy. With the Bold, he led them in key passes / chances created. Even though he didn't have the most assists, he still is a guy who can create. So that's the part of his game, because Justin Shea is as much upside as he has. We talk all the time about how he's a center back and not a right back. Now, he has enough athleticism that he can get forward, and he does cross okay, but he doesn't get forward and then become a pure attacker like Tuamase does. Now, Tuamase probably is not quite the defender, especially one-on-one, like bodying up on people. He's got enough pace, certainly. So, he's going to need help from the inside from Tafari, but so does Justin Shea, because Justin Shea is still inexperienced enough that he gets caught out of position from time to time. So, Justin is more of a traditional, like when Oscar first took over, the kind of outside backs that Oscar had when Shea outside backs, it looks like that, like Grana, or some of those guys, as opposed to the flying kind of guys that Luchi seems to like. So it'll be a really interesting question, because Che's going to be back in training Monday. So it's going to be super interesting next week to see if Che walks in, or whether it's like Tuamase's playing pretty good. I think he looks really good as the kind of outside back that Luchi likes. So I don't know that he'll give that spot up right away, because I think he looks really good.
And then again, we mentioned this earlier when we started talking about the game, is Ryan Hollingshead had a real black and white game. You were really, really high on him in your post game reaction.
Yeah.
And I was really worried that we were seeing one of his worst performances up until he scored the goal, and it was a little redemptive for him.
Yeah, the trick is that in this particular team, you know, he's going up mostly against Fagundes in that half, who's a good player. Ryan had a stretch of about 3 or 4 games where he was making some mental mistakes. And he kind of, over the next few games, he kind of concentrated on the defense, and he kind of cleaned a lot of that up. And then this game, he went back to trying to be more offensive. So what I particularly liked was that there was more of a balance in his game, that it wasn't like either all defense or all offense. And that's what I want to see from him, particularly in this 4-4-1-1 kind of shape thing that they're doing with Schoen in front of him. You know, he doesn't need to go crazy up the field anymore with Schoen up there. So I did not notice all the giveaways in the first half. I just thought, for the most part, he was a two-way player, and that's the kind of player that I want out of that position.
Yeah, I mean, I think I stopped counting at 4, if not 5, where he would get the ball into kind of towards the final third, and he'd look to play a lateral ball, and he'd play it, and he would take too long to do it, and Austin would just cut it out each time, and then suddenly the counter was on, and there you see him having to run, and you know, and then here's the other problem. There were a couple of moments where he was very un-Ryan-like, where he made the turnover, and he didn't track back, and suddenly Austin was in a good position to do something. Now, thankfully, Austin is so bad, at least that version of Austin, which isn't their best 11. They were just so bad across the field that they could never do anything with it. But again, he scored the goal, and you could tell how delighted he was. And it was by the way, it was a nice little finish. So kudos to Ryan.
He was a little low, Who Scored had him as their best player for Dallas, highest rated, but that's because he's well, they skew when somebody scores, particularly a defender, but. He passed at 80%, which is a little low. You want to see him closer to 90, but he also had 2 key passes, and he had 2 successful dribbles. So he was doing some things a little bit both ways. And maybe wasn't quite as crisp with the passing as you'd like. I'll give you that, but I didn't really. I thought out of 61 passes, he had a lot of touches too. That was a high volume game for him, 74, and that was one of the, right up there with the high. Brisson had 75, so that was the top touches out of a defender. So there was a lot of play through Ryan. More opportunities to give it away. 3 aerials that led the team too. That's crazy. So pretty good game.
All right. Well, then Brisson did finally give up his stupid yellow card, so he's out in the game against Kansas. It was really bad. I know there's a lot of reasons to like Brisson because he really seems to enjoy being here and wearing the jerseys, but that cat makes, for being one of the more veteran players on this team, he makes a litany of really bad decisions.
Yeah, he's just inconsistent. It's like at the beginning of the year we were talking about how he was often the best defender on the team, for a few games here and there. It wasn't every time, but it was pretty consistent. And it was Hedges that was having a couple moments when he was playing hurt, and it was Martinez when he started to labor, and Brisson was carrying the defense. But the last couple of games, Brisson, I don't know whether he's starting to get the summer, breakdowns or what's happening, but he's definitely he managed to go 3 or 4 games without getting a yellow card, so he didn't get suspended, thank goodness, because we would have been looking at Kaiser Gomez playing center back, which would have been a little early for that. But thankfully Tafari is playing out of his mind. But there's a pretty easy solution to Brisson being suspended.
Yeah, man. All hail Tafari, which is such a great story. It's probably my favorite story of the season so far. In fact, I think MLS, I don't remember who posted did you see the photo of him running alongside somebody else and he had the most crazy ass looking look on his face?
I did not.
It was just pure passion, and it was great. It was fantastic, and what a good story, and he's played so well. And it is really interesting to note that, we're at a point in the season where they have been, not losing games with Brisson and Tafari as their center backs, and now Hedges looks like he's close to coming back. I don't know how far. I'm sure you're going to tell us how far Martinez is, but Luchi's got some decisions to make, and I will be more surprised if he sits Tafari than if he keeps one of the other 2 guys on the bench for a long period of time.
I think there's no way he sets him because right now, like, one of his weaknesses, would have been passing. But now he's up at 90% clip, 70 touches. The clearances are there, the defense is there, and his range is unbelievable. His pace is to recover and to help out on the outside is fantastic. His game reading is really good. I hate to tell you this, Peter, but like if you're a foreign coach scouting this team and you want to look at a defender like, does Dallas have any defenders that can help me? You can take a look at that guy and be like, look at the pace, the size, the strength, the power, the range. Man, I can coach that dude up.
Yeah, and when you talk about his improving his passing, is it he's just stopped making those passes that were probably they're high risk, low value passes, those long balls that he was trying to do when he first got there. He's not doing that anymore. He's now just kind of sticking to more the more confident passing, the more likely stuff. So, I mean, he'll still try some things, and he has gotten better at it, but he's also just making better choices in that game, in that part of the game.
He's even trying to sneak forward a little bit from time to time and getting involved in stuff when he feels like he's clear to do so.
2 assists in the last 2 games?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's not to like?
What about that for a center back?
Yeah, that's how it should be. I mean, listen, what you want is, look, they drafted a kid and he sat around on the bench for a year. We had no idea. Even like 2 months ago, we had no idea if he could play. He finally got the opportunity and he took it. And every game he made. Now, the first game was a little raw. Second game, still a little, but better. And every single game, it was a measurable step forward. And now we're to a point where we're talking about you would keep him in over any other defender that this team has. That's how good he's been.
The progression is. I mean, I literally cannot think of another player who has stepped into the team and progressed as quickly. I mean, I'm sure there is somebody, and I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But tell me the last guy came in and under his circumstance and progressed as quickly as Tafari has.
I mean, even like Reggie, like that whole first season, like the first third of the season, he was making big mistakes, mental mistakes, and as good as Reggie became, it was a rough start. I mean, defense, so much about defense. And this is the reason why you have like Chiellini play until he's 40. So much of defense can be about the mind, about the brain. That's why you can play there often longer than you can further up the field. And that's what's some of the things that's so great about his progression is that he always had the size and the power and the speed and the pace. And it was like, it's the mental part that is so clearly advanced, the decision-making, the choices, the recognition of what a deficiency was. I would see him after practice working extra on things that we all knew were deficiencies. The guy works hard and he works at it and he tries to improve his craft. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is good stuff. Well, it was always fun to win against the very attention-starved Austin FC. Now, the one thing that was topping my notes that I wanted to talk about, and I saved to the very end, because it has nothing to do with the game, is obviously I was not there. I was watching it on television, and I turned on the TV, and they start the game, and I'm thinking to myself, we get like 2 or 3 minutes into the game, and I'm thinking, Why are they shooting this from the camera that's at the top of section 106 and not from the press box? It's the mid. I don't know what you in the TV gear in the TV world call that position, Buzz. What do you call that?
Well, it's the game camera. The one usually it's up at the press box level. Sometimes they will put it down on the lower level.
Okay, but so the lower level versus the upper level don't have different nomenclature to them?
No, it's just upper and lower.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still the game camera.
So I started seeing them myself. I'm like, why are they shooting from a lower angle all this action? Because they never do that. They always use the camera that's up in the press box. And it was bothering me. I was like, this is because one, I don't like that particular angle. I like the higher angle because you get to see more of the field and et cetera, et cetera. And a friend of mine that was at the game sent me a picture, and he sent me a picture of how the front office had boxed all of the Austin FC supporter group fan, which was about 2,000 of them, all in the upper rows in the northeast corner of the stadium. And it dawned on me and wondered openly if, in fact, somebody, because they were they own the production of this TV broadcast, if somebody at Dallas didn't tell the producer and director, hey, use the lower angle camera and do everything in your power to keep them off the TV broadcast. Well, because you could not see that group of 2,000 people almost at all the entire broadcast.
Yeah, I would 100% believe that they were attempting to keep Austin off the broadcast. I totally believe that. I would tell you that the camera moving actually makes that harder. It's easier to not show them from the higher angle because you can point the camera straight down at the field.
So why would they use the lower angle camera then?
Well, it just depends on my guess is that Austin brought people up here and did stuff from the booth. which limits the amount of space in the booth, and then you have to move the camera out. That's my guess. I was not involved, but that's my guess.
My conspiracy theory is ruined.
Yeah, well, no. I totally buy the conspiracy theory of don't show the Austin fans. I totally believe that, 100%. But the camera moving would be a detriment to that. Not because if it went, just think about it. If the camera's down low, you're shooting more horizontally across the field. You're more likely to get the top of the stands. When you're higher up, you can shoot straight down at the field and go no stands at all. So it's actually easier to crop them out if you're in the high position.
I see. Okay.
But I still believe your theory that they intentionally chose not to show them. I buy that 100%.
Okay. So I made that comment on Twitter, and a lot of people called it a genius move. And, I'm really torn about that because it seems very counterintuitive to me to act. I mean, if in fact, and again, we're guessing here, right? We're speculating.
Yeah.
And I want to be fair about that. But if in fact it turns out that they did actively do that, doesn't that seem counterintuitive? I mean, if I was at the league level, I'd be pissed that a team traveled 2,000 people and you're trying to hide that fact.
Well, there's two.
And by the way, what you ended up seeing instead were a bunch of empty seats. Because you didn't travel, your own home people didn't show up until after the second half started.
Well, in the early days of MLS, they would try never to show empty seats if possible. That's but you should do that anyway because who cares about the seats? Show the field. That's a pet peeve of mine about seeing all these people up in the stands. It's like just frame the field and cut that other crap out. The thing is that. The broadcast these days, I don't think I'm giving away secrets here. The broadcast these days, because there's a lot of shared elements due to the pandemic, even though the home show is doing the production, there's a lot of remote teams that are taking just the feed and adding talent. That's just the way it is right now when you can't really travel people. So you're supposed to do, from the league's instructions, you're supposed to do a relatively neutral show, even though technically it's your broadcast. Now, in every other scenario, you do your show and the road team does their show, and they can make it as biased as they want because the show belongs to them. And technically that's true. It's Dallas's broadcast. They can make it as biased as they want to. You're kind of right now supposed to help out the other team. So it'll just depend on, some teams bring a single camera that's theirs, so maybe you have to worry less about them. Sometimes they might. Sometimes you just run into crews where the home team is not as helpful as you would like them to be. That does occasionally happen. In this case, I'm sure that the Dallas organization probably felt like we shouldn't show a whole bunch of Austin FC fans. The smart decision in my mind is that to put them all on the top of the section, because in theory, you're supposed to show the game anyway, and you're only going to get like a couple of rows of bleed over on the front. This is the reason why they put those fake ads at the bottom of the stands during the COVID games.
Stuff, right?
They didn't bother to put them all the way up; they just put them at the bottom because you're only going to get the bottom 5 or 6 rows. So making the Austin fans all sit at the top means you're not going to see them. So you really didn't have to do a whole lot to not see them. So I'm sure that was part of. I guarantee you, somebody with Dallas was like, "Don't show them." I just know it. I don't even have to know it to know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it. And this is also, by the way, the same club that moved their supporters group completely off camera altogether. So,
yeah,
it's fascinating to me that for one of the very rare times in that stadium's history, there was an actual supporters group battle going on, and it was by and large completely absent from the TV broadcast.
Yeah.
And I just think that's counterintuitive to what the league's trying to build. That's kind of my point to all that stuff. Now,
I agree. Selling game day atmosphere is one of the most useful parts about broadcasts, and they don't do a very good job of it.
All right. Well, anyway, the good news, all we should really care about is the result, and it was Dallas 2, Austin 0. And that means up next is a visit from Sporting Kansas City.
Well, before we go on, you want to bring in Dan and see if he has any Austin.
Did Dan finally show up?
It looks like it, yeah.
Hello.
Hey, Dan.
A little hot.
I'm coming in hot.
Yeah.
We love it when you're hot. Leave him right like that, Buzz. You can hear him clearly and well.
Don't do that. Don't do that at all.
So how long have you been lurking in the background, Dan?
Last 5 or so minutes.
Would you like to throw any particular post win over Austin thoughts?
I didn't catch the game talk, so I'm just going to go back and listen to what Buzz said and treat it as gospel. I actually haven't seen the last 20 minutes of the game either.
What about anything I said about the game, Dan?
Yeah, that too. I will say one thing. I will say the away fans. That's actually where they put the Houston fans as well. I just didn't know if that was going to be like the designated section this season, but I guess maybe it is.
I suppose so. There was far more Austin fans than there was Houston fans. That's for sure.
It's true.
Yeah. I guess I will ask you, Dan, I know you didn't go to the game, but you are in those circles because I know you were covering the Denton game instead. Is there any kind of like after-the-fact stories to tell about how the Austin fans and the Dallas fans dealt with each other out and around the stadium before and afterwards?
It doesn't sound like they did.
Oh, okay. There was no tussling, because Houston used to come to town and we'd always end up hearing about police being called and people getting in fights.
Yeah, well, that's a rivalry. That's different.
Buzz, did you see how I set him up? Did you see how slowly and high I pitched that softball to Dan? Did you like that?
I appreciate it.
Yeah. That's like...
I like that you had the little tracer on the ball and everything.
You could see it. Yeah, it was bright yellow, and
it's not a rivalry.
you crushed it. Well, it's not.
In 2 or 3 years, maybe a rivalry develops. But I mean, just because people have a Slack channel where they get a little ding every time someone tweets about Austin FC and then they go and say nasty things, that doesn't make a rivalry.
Yeah.
That just makes for some really sad people.
It was just so easy to get Dan revved up. Good Lord. It was awesome.
Oh, yes.
You would not want to have a channel like that for FC Dallas because it would be an endless streams of people talking about the FC Dallas U15 team beating the U.S. Women's National Team.
And that's it. And like the Twitter alert you have, there are people signed up to a Slack channel, and they've bragged about this to the FC Dallas supporters groups because they thought initially it was such a wonderful idea that they get dinged and then they can, there's certain terms. Sad FCD fans actually sent me an example of it. And it was like 8 tweets, all the same verbiage on each one, responding to someone who said something about Austin FC, and it's like that's a strategy of theirs to kind of make it seem like the attention is so much greater than it is. And you know what? Fair enough. If it works, great. It's bloody annoying, but if it works eventually and someone actually gives a crap about them, then more power to them, I guess.
Well, we had a rather fun discussion on our channel, on our group chat we had about the new Austin podcast, Verde and Black. And every time I hear that phrase, I just laugh because it's just so ridiculous to me that for all of the good things, whether you like it or not, you have to admit it's worked in terms of generating fan sales and ticket sales and so forth. The branding that Austin has done by and large is really good. But the fact that somebody somewhere along the way decided that they had to go with Verde and Black because they're for all the obvious reasons don't want to use the word negro. It just is so weird to me that they even let it get that far. And I don't know. It's not even worth bringing up or talking about. But sometimes I think for all the good things they did, that just makes them look ridiculous.
Peter, when they can't pronounce Verde properly, they're not going to pronounce Negro properly.
How do they pronounce it? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Well, you don't say Verdi.
Oh.
I have to admit that I didn't know that it was a podcast. I thought that's just what they called their colors.
Well, they did, but now they're calling that's what brought it up again. Is they posted something on social media the other day that they were announcing their podcast, and it's called Verde and Black. And I'm thinking, why would you do that? Why would you paint yourself in that corner?
That's an FC Dallas move, quite honestly.
Yeah, it's very strange. And look, if you were afraid, if you're committed to sticking with Verde. Like, why didn't you just say, call it Viva Verde, or just stick with the green element, right? If you're really worried about negro and black, then set that off to the side and don't deal with it.
Oh, it's team produced. Adrian Healy.
Yeah. It's their own official podcast.
Oh, who wants to listen to that?
I'm sure the podcast is fine. The name of it is just so ridiculous to me. It's so soft and just like
so soft.
It's very soft, and it drove me nuts when I saw it.
How many ply is it?
Huh?
How many ply?
Oh, it's like no more than 2, Dan.
Yeah,
okay.
It's very thin.
So like soft but low quality.
It's like the Sam's Club bargain tissue. It's not Charmin. It's not my beloved Charmin that I must have at all times in my life.
Should I just go, because the conversation's definitely got lower?
No, this is much better. This got way better since you.
The comedic value went up.
I'll go back to DFW. It'll be fine. I'll just wait for a flight that's not coming.
Okay, so we did get that stuff out of the way. Can we now, Buzz, move on to talking about
Sporting.
Herman Vermes and his troops trumping in? Because here's the deal. I don't know if anybody really cares or was paying attention, but last night Herman Vermes decided to tank his team's cup chances because he wanted to make sure he had his best 11 for his trip to Dallas.
Which cup was it? Was it the Leagues Cup?
Leagues Cup, yeah.
Right, who cares about that?
They got crushed.
Yeah,
they were like 6-1.
It's not a friendly cup.
Right.
Yeah. Well, sometimes when you squad rotate, you get wrecked. So, there you go.
Well, he even talked
Unless
about
you
that.
do it against FC Dallas.
Unless you're New York.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we don't have Brisson. His Hedges back.
Yeah.
Is he going to start the game?
Yep. Yeah, Hedges is in. Hedges and Martinez are both cleared and both participating. But based on what I saw today, 100% Hedges is in. And Hedges will be on the left because Tafari will keep his right center back spot next to Tuamasi.
Okay.
Yeah. Straight Hedges up. He's ready. He's good. Yep. Ryan's, this is the time of year. This is a slight caveat. This is the time of year where guys have knocks. So on the day of the game, all of a sudden there could be like one change you didn't see coming just because a guy like stiffened up or something. It can happen, but it's Hedges, Ryan, Tafari, and Tuamasi across the back. Mauer's still in. Yeah.
So, it feels like, and to be fair, because we were all guilty of this, it was several weeks ago. We looked at the schedule and we went through and we were all like, man, if they get like 1 point out of the rest of the season, that'll be great. And they've poked us right in the face by going on this unbeaten streak. And I know this is going to sound like, oh, well, guys, you said that a few weeks ago, but they really do need to win these next 2 home games against 2 of the best teams in the West, because the rest of the schedule really starts to get hairy again after that.
Well, this is the real stretch. Is the 2 home games, and then it's 6 of 7 on the road. Listen, Dallas, if you guys follow us on Twitter, you saw that graph we posted how everybody in the league has a huge home field winning percentage and stinks on the road. It's everybody. Yeah. The difference between good teams and bad teams is how you do on the road. And this team has stunk on the road, and they have 6 of 7 coming on the road. Now, when we were doing our points thing, we neglected to remember that Luchi owns Vermes. So that we forgot to factor that in. And then, they carried that over, that positivity, a little bit to the Seattle game. But now they're going to get both those teams now pissed. They're going to come back here. So these 2 home games become really, really important, only because of these 6 of 7 coming up on the road. Now, the opposite of that, of course, is you end with a nice homestand. But by then it's going to be, if you manage to get a couple points these next 2 home games, and then carry some positivity to those road games and maybe try and get a couple of things going. I mean, you're playing Houston and Austin on the road. There's some chances there. San Jose is not that great. You got Houston twice. In fact, Vancouver's not that great. So there's among the road games is some opportunity maybe if you're feeling good about yourself. That's why these 2 games are huge.
Yeah, and I would say that if they do end up getting, even if they just get 4 points out of these 2 home games, as much as we hate road games and they haven't been good, to your point, Buzz, it's at Houston, at Austin, at Salt Lake. Those are 3 games that somewhere in there, maybe you'd like to get a point or 4 points maybe out of, if
maybe.
you could walk away with a win, loss, and a tie out of those, that's, I guess the oddity of all this is that several weeks ago we went through this entire list and we were struggling to come up with 4 points over the course of the rest of the season, and now our attitude has changed so much that now we're thinking about, well, we could get 4 points at home in these 2 games, and there's
it's a completely different team.
It is,
yeah,
and it's a different team without DPs.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? Play the kids.
Play the kids.
Well, we can go back to my list. You remember of the things there were like 5 things, right? It was the wings. They fixed that. They got the 6 in. They've solved right back initially with Che, and now even more so to Amasi. Center backs got healthy. I mean, all those things happened. Look what the team is. Oh, they benched Har for Pepe. They did those 5 things, and they're fine. So.
Well, I'm glad they listened to you. Speaking of that, I understand that
that's a coincidence.
Or was it?
Or was it? Yeah.
Because you also need to report back to everybody your conversation with Luchi today.
Yeah. Well, let's before I do that, let's finish talking about Sporting, because I think if you go back to the game where they had success, I think you'll recognize that they'll want to try and replicate some of those same things, and I think. When you combine that with the first half of the Austin game, I think that means that Edwin Cerrillo is likely to start with next to Facu. That's going to be another change over Ricarte, because Luchi, on the road he put Edwin in there, and Edwin, I even talked about at the time that idea of Edwin stepping forward onto their 6. Remember we talked about it on the podcast, and that element, that play, that shape worked. And then Ricarte wasn't great in the first half the other day, and Acosta has not lit it up since he came back. So that's the other change I think is going to happen. All right, so moving on to conversation with Luchi. The first thing is that Johnny Nelson is hurt. I don't want to. It's vaguely related to something in the back. Now, I'm not a doctor. I imagine the team officially will eventually say what the specific injury is. And I don't want to try and guess. It's something related to his back. For all I know, he's just strained it or something. Who knows? But he's not available apparently. But Justin Che will be back Monday, which doesn't help for this game, of course. And Benny Redzik is the other hurt player who's close to being able to run again, which is important in terms of playing soccer. So, conversation with Luchi. Yeah, I did ask him about the Vermes thing, and we had a little chuckle about it. And it's just basically he thinks it's kind of a coincidence. He respects the guy as a coach, and they try and beat him. So they just happen to have had success with it. I don't know that there's anything more to it than that. They really like, I think, the gist of the conversation a lot was they really like the things that are happening and things that we talked about on this podcast. The way Shun has come in and added that element similar to Paxton, and those 2 guys have added that element similar to Paxton. The idea that Jesus, when he's higher, has that ability to get into the box and do dangerous things, which we saw in the second half against Austin. I still don't agree with him about he wants that 2 more defensive-minded players in there in that double 6 look. I still think one of them can be more progressive. Ideally, that would be Acosta, because we see when we watch Facu and Cerrillo do it together that Facu tends to try and go forward and become that guy, and that's not necessarily his perfect game. And Cerrillo tries to do it a little bit too, and again, that's not really his game. So it's a little bit of a stretch for me that that's the way to go, but I think they're convinced that what they did last time against Kansas City was super effective and super good, and that's what they want to continue with. And then other than that, we talked a little bit about, I asked him what we talked about some here was with all these veterans now are on the bench and they're not playing, but he complimented all of them in terms of their professionalism and how their Hara and Ricarte and O'Brien are all competing and ready to play. And Vargas is starting to show a little bit. And he actually said he had a conversation with the kid and he's really determined to try and, show some things and make some progression and get back to maybe where he was in the spring. And so when you have a lot of, it's easy as a coach when things are going well. And this is kind of the takeaway from the whole conversation today. When things are going well, it's easy to manage people because it's hard. If you're on the bench, it's hard to say, man, I should be starting when the team's winning. You know, Pepe's banging in all those goals. It's hard for a guy like Hart to say, "Oh, I should be starting." Dude, Pepe's got 8 goals and you got 2, right? So, you know, there's a lot of positivity around the team. Everyone's feeling really good about the way things are going. You know, they're getting a couple of pieces that have been hurt are starting to come back, and they really feel like the vibe I got from sort of watching training and listening and even talking to Luchi was just how they think there's now an opportunity to right the season and get right back in the mix, because if they can win these 2 games, or at least get 4, as you said, out of these next 2, that people will start to take them a little more seriously. And then if they can carry some of that mojo and get a few points, as we discussed, over this next stretch and get to the back half of the season when they load up on home games again, they'll have an opportunity to get back in the playoffs. So, you know, it's a pretty positive, pretty good time around the team right now. We'll have to see if they can maintain it, you know.
Well, that game is coming up a Saturday night at Toyota Stadium. Should be a good time for all. I think it starts at 7:30, and again, it's on Texas 21. All right, let's see. We'll stick with FC Dallas information first before we get to Dan's part in all of this. Not out of the blue, and Buzz, you've been talking about this for a while. Although the circumstances and details around this, I'm befuddled by to no end, is that Dante Seeley is on loan now to PSV on a 2-year loan. Yeah,
they made it official today. You know, this is a move that I've been expecting for like 3 years, you know, because Dante's gone there a time or 2 before, you know, and this was one of the places that they have been lining up basically for a long time. You know, and he even went there like a month ago, was it, when he posted that picture? And I thought maybe he'd blown it by posting that picture, but
yeah,
you know, it was, from the people that I've talked to about it, it was just a question of, it wasn't inevitable, but it was like all parties wanted it to happen. It's just that working out the details was complicated. And I think you can see that in the 2-year part, because that's unusual, I feel. And there is a buy in it, written in it, which is good, you know, for Dallas. So I feel like maybe that they want to kind of invest in the kid a little bit and see how he reacts. You know, the one nice thing for him will be that he wasn't getting consistent minutes here, you know, and the North Texas option wasn't really going to help him very much. So this will be a situation where he can go to their reserves or U23 team and be the star, and, you know, and they'll really push his development and see what happens. And if they buy him, great. If they don't and he comes back, it'll have been a good experience and he'll have learned a lot. The real fascinating takeaway for me is that, you know, just reading tea leaves and talking to people, I feel like Dallas wanted to defend their turf a little bit. And we're not going to give them away for nothing, just as we've seen them do right now with Justin Shea, right? Isn't that, we keep seeing these reports of Byron wanted him and Dallas was like, oh, well, you know, we kind of want to keep him, you know, going to have to pony up a little more money. So it seems like maybe Dallas is pushing back a little bit right now on these transfers of maybe we gave away Richards too cheaply. And maybe now if you want our guys, we know our guys are good. Now you're going to have to come a little more now, you know. So that for me is the big fascinating takeaway from this whole scenario. And I don't have any strict evidence for that. I just have like these impressions based on these pushbacks and the delays on these moves and how long they took. You know, they're not simple sometimes to work out monetarily. So good for Seeley. Hopefully it does well. Good for him.
And the academy starts training here soon.
Yeah, the academy started. The older team started on August 2nd. They'll be getting into preseason stuff already. I was able to dig out a little bit of information about who's with what teams, and I put all that into my academy preview article. I did not really dig into like which one of those guys might be with North Texas relatively soon. Obviously, Corcoran's the one who has been there this year. I think right now most of the academy guys are not going to be with North Texas because they're really struggling. You know, if North Texas was doing better, they would have room for some of those academy guys. And we also have a little bit of a gap. You know, Corcoran is only 14, 15 years old. So, you know, it's no rush with him, you know, and the guys that are of the same sort of age coming up there's a couple of guys that are going to be in the 19s that are going to kick around North Texas a little bit, but I don't think they'll be a core part of the thing going the rest of this season as much. So it's just exciting to get back into the MLS next season. And I love the academy stuff, and hopefully everybody enjoyed that article.
Oh my gosh, it's some of the best content you put out every year. I love it, and everybody should read it if you care anything about the club.
Well, thank you.
All right. Well, Dan, you, as we said earlier, you were not at FC Dallas's win over Austin. You were at the more exciting adventure up in Denton with the Diablos.
Oh, it was a national championship, yeah. Denton hosting the MPSL National Championship. It has been an absolute crying shame that every one of those playoff games clashed with an FC Dallas home game, because that is a fantastic team to watch, and they really deserve a little bit extra support. Although that said, they did have 2,400 people out at Denton High School on Saturday for the championship game. A few dozen people came down from Tulsa.
Wow.
For Tulsa Athletic. There was back and forth smoke bombs. There was banners cheering. It was a lot of, two good little supporters groups there with the Harbingers and whatever Tulsa's one is called. Denton, they're considered a second half team, but something habit they've got into lately is getting 2 goals inside the first 10 minutes. And sure enough, again, that happens. Anthony Powell, ex-sidekick, just catches the keeper off guard. Keeper looks like he has a simple save of a shot from outside the area, and he just kind of drops it over his head. A couple minutes later, the captain Owen Weirin pops up with a header on a corner, and then the fight back begins. It's a good back and forth tie. Tulsa pull back 2. They have another disallowed. Suddenly, it's not looking so hot for the home team, but they. Like they say themselves, they're a second half team. Trevor Aman, who is the team's top scorer after scoring 9 goals in the 5 playoff games, and forced an own goal. So
that's amazing. So
close. Yeah. He scored 6 in the regular season and 9 in the playoffs.
Gamer.
Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
He's one of the guys from Midwestern State. Talked to him after the game. He was like, "Yeah, I think I'm one of the best in the country when I really get my game going at this level." And I was like, "Yeah, I kind of saw that." Yeah.
Yeah, and his teammate won the Golden Boot for the Golden Ball. Golden Ball.
Yeah, Sam Code. He got injured in their first playoff game, so he missed the last couple. Unfortunately, he missed. That meant he also missed the ceremony to give him the Golden Ball.
Oh.
We were joking in the press box that Damon should go and accept it on his behalf and then celebrate a bit. But, he already had the Chisholm Trail belt, the West Region Championship, and then the MPSL Championship. So he had his hands full.
Well, I appreciate the game report. Congratulations to the Diablos and their owner, Damon, who does a great job promoting his club. That's a cool little organization. I'm a proud owner of a Denton Diablos t-shirt that I bought back when they first launched the thing, and I love wearing it. So congratulations to those guys. And I have to admit, I do carry a small level of shame that I have yet to go to a game, but I'll have to correct that.
He owes me a hoodie.
Also, shout out to MPSL because the media goodie bag was really cool and had the most kit nerdy thing. They gave us sleeve patches.
Oh, wow. That is cool.
Yeah. Like the rubber ones off the jerseys for some reason.
I understand that there's some phenomenal advertising board material at that venue as well.
Well, there is it's seen better days, but that Third Degree one's still sitting there in the corner.
Yeah.
Well, it was in the video. I took a screen grab of it because I was watching the highlight video, and I was like, what does that board say? Is that Buzz's logo? And
yeah.
I'll be damned. They do a little Third Degree promotion out there for you, Buzz, so that's good. Did you pay for that?
No. It's
you just paid for it with your passion for the game.
Well, we cover MPSL like it's a real deal because it is. And we support local soccer, so we're the if you will, unofficial media partner of some of the local MPSL teams. So they gave us a signboard in the sense like the Dallas Morning News does the little thing at the Toyota or whatever. So that was our little support local soccer thing.
All right. Well,
I guess that means we have to keep covering them now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, we have to keep covering because we support local soccer, not because they give us a signboard.
Okay, on to the Roja League.
Yeah.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I am a sleepy dude because I'm doing this on the back of doing a 2-hour preview show on the ticket. So I'm tired and I'm.
Peter, what were you
wearing
previewing?
out.
We're halfway through the season.
That's true. Well, it's a different set of seasons. Damn.
Did you pick Newcastle to get relegated again?
I did not. No.
Yes.
I did not. I picked Crystal Palace. I picked Burnley and Brentford.
Those sound like good picks to me.
Yeah. Do you like those picks, Dan?
No,
Is that
because
your-
Watford wasn't there.
I specifically did not relegate them because of you, because you hate them so much.
The hell is wrong with you?
Hey, by the way, my one little tiny EPL bit is that the kid from FCD and Solar who plays for Norwich is actually got into made his
Tompkins?
Tompkinson made his first team debut in the preseason. I don't know if he's going to make their squad for the actual season, but he did make his first team debut in the preseason, so super cool for him. So hopefully he'll be in some games this season. That'd be great.
I'll say he doesn't have to be registered. He's under the age.
Okay, I don't know how all that works. I just, I know he made his debut, so I'm hoping that we'll see him get into a game during the season. That'd be awesome. If your local kid make it.
Yeah, it was funny because I think we talked about this on the show because what was really cool about it was his dad was in attendance and took a picture of him and posted it online of when he was subbing in for his first appearance. And I thought, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Your dad gets to be there and take your picture when you're getting subbed into your first Premier League level game. Oh, gosh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, on to the interstitial. Soccer 90 is your sponsor of Third Degree, the podcast, and your source for all your FC Dallas, U.S. national team, and international club gear. You might want something from Chivas or Juventus or Chelsea or any other number of clubs, or you may want some of that new wacky-looking USA gear. You can get it at soccer90.com, and because you are a Third Degree listener, you're going to get 25% off your order, which means you can just buy more stuff, right? When you use the code Third Degree at checkout at soccer90.com. Well, Daniel, thank you for showing up late because it's always good to have you on the pod. It's better with you than without you, sir.
Likewise, thanks.
Energy low.
Yeah.
Energy low. And Buzz, good week of stuff from you too, sir.
Thanks, man. And you guys should all make sure and tune in next week because there just maybe might be something special with Soccer 90 next week. Maybe.
Oh,
Wait, what?
what does that mean?
We'll see. We'll see.
And we're going to do mid-season prediction or mid-season awards next week.
Oh, we were going to do that this week.
Well, let's do it next week.
We'll do it next week. Okay.
We'll do it next week, please.
Yeah, next week's fine. We got 2 games
I'm
next
very
week.
sweepy.
We got 2 games next week.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll make it work.
Yep.
Right, Dan?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, good FC Dallas Curious fan. We will speak to you next week with 2 games and mid-season awards and a whole bunch of other stuff on Third Degree, the podcast.
Champions.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.